One thing that a spreadsheet can't tell you that a phone call can would be everything that's behind the number. What are the assumptions under that? What's the interest rate assumptions? What's the inflation that we've baked into that particular assumption? There's so much below the surface. That's why there's much more needed than just a single point of data at any given point in time. My name is Mike Wall. I'm the Executive Director of Automotive Analysis here at S&P Global Mobility. I've been with the firm, about 22 years, going on 23. One word that clients would use to describe me, I would say, is curious. Those relationships have evolved significantly over the years. I mean, one of the things that we've enjoyed is moving up through the org chart, if you will, of a firm. Meaning, when you're talking about vehicle forecasts, you can sometimes get myopically focused to say, okay, maybe it's just the product planner that's interested, or the person that's at the plant level. But reality is everybody through the value chain of the supplier or at the automaker or through that org chart should have visibility on how the market is behaving. Meaning, if you're going all the way up to the CFO or the CEO, understanding how the business is shifting, and understanding how that might impact their business, all the way down through to the plant floor. So we see that whether you're talking about a supplier or an automaker, it's critically important throughout that whole organization to have an understanding of how the market is behaving. It really does come down to the foundational forecasts that we provide. What generally happens within this industry is an automaker will design and conceptualize a new vehicle. Might be either a brand new vehicle or maybe it's a redesigned vehicle, and they send it out by way of a request for quote to suppliers, asking them to quote on that business. And so that supplier has to have visibility. In order for them to most accurately quote that business, they need to have an understanding of how many units are going to be produced. So the automaker will tell them how many they think they will produce of that vehicle. In some cases, it may be close, it may be pretty accurate, but in many cases, it might be a little optimistic. It might not be quite as accurate. And that's where one of many use cases for our products is that type of example, is trying to understand, okay, what is the addressable market for this vehicle? What is the effective volume? What might we be looking at for those volumes? So I've got a number of suppliers who've had some very significant successes in using our forecast to help better fine-tune their quoting process, and more importantly, best optimally outfit and invest in the lines that they're producing these components with, and as they're quoting on this business, better dialing in expectations around that, and it's saving themselves money in doing so. Meaning, if suddenly you don't need as much capital investment, you don't need as much fixed investment in that particular line or in the tooling, because you're not using 150,000 units, you're using 100,000 units as your target, or 75,000 units. That can have a big effect on your business. It also affords the opportunity for that supplier to maybe ask some probing questions to their customer. Say, I know you're telling me 150,000 units, but we've got some sources and some analysis that's leading us to believe that it's a pretty competitive market. There could be some pressures on that. We're not sure we want to go down the road of capacitizing towards that amount. Help us get there. I think the first thing is a trusted advisor. These suppliers, big and small, we work with the wide range of suppliers, from the largest of large multi-billion-dollar supplier to smaller mom and pop shops, if you will, that are your tier 3 or tier 4 supplier. And at the end of the day, it comes to, this is a very complicated industry, wildly volatile, incredibly difficult to predict and forecast, and yet you could have the strongest bench on your team at these different suppliers, and it's always helpful to have that trusted advisor to lean on, to ask the question on what are you hearing? What's going on in the market? What can we expect? What should we be expecting? Again, I think that's what we bring to the table. If I strip out the modeling and the data itself, is having that advisor to help guide a company through whatever decision point they're trying to make. Is it quoting on a new program, maybe investing in a new plant, buying that new equipment for a line, all of that, trying to have comfort in the outlook, or maybe not comfort. The reality is this is a tricky industry. So maybe it's just trying to understand the risks, trying to understand the scenarios. Again, we put out a point in time forecast. That's great. And again, we live and die by that, and I've built a career around that. But we realize that the industry is much more dynamic than that. And you need to have visibility on upside scenarios and downside scenarios. That's something that transcends a simple Excel spreadsheet. That's where hopefully we prove our mettle for our customers and our clients, is being able to, again, be that trusted advisor to help them better plan and prepare for the volatility that we will undoubtedly see going forward. It's sort of trivial and cliche to say, oh, information moves fast. It does. It's not that trivial because it's moving faster. We put out a production forecast as an example monthly, but as soon as that production forecast goes out, we're immediately getting new data in. We're immediately trying to incorporate new assumptions and seeing how that's changing our forecast. So to that point, that's part of the relationship that we bring to the business transaction. And as that data is coming at us, data flies at us fast. And understanding how that is changing the market, how that changes our assumptions. And again, going back to that previous question, having that trusted advisor to lean on and change the dial on any one particular assumption. How does that change the forecast? How does that change how you as a supplier should be looking at a particular book of business or a particular new business opportunity? That's what, again, we can bring to the equation on that front. I firmly believe that the people and the analysts are really where our value is shown and demonstrated to customers. Again, the output that they may use in their day-to-day business might be a number or a forecast file, but we realize that those forecast files are driven and created by people. Again, a model may be helping with some of those settings, but it's the intel that is powering all of those numbers. I've worked for small boutique forecast operations, and I've worked for much larger operations. And I can tell you, having boots on the ground in every market that is, producing and in every major market that's selling vehicles is a game-changing competitive advantage for us. Meaning, I have colleagues in Japan, in South Korea, in China, throughout Europe, in South America. I can't cover the world myself from Michigan. No colleague can adequately forecast the global industry from a single source location. It's just not practically or physically possible. Having those folks, those analysts on the ground in those markets, and more importantly, developing relationships and intelligence in those markets, I would argue probably the single most important attribute for us as a firm to become and to be that trusted advisor for our clients. So I've been doing this for, like I said, over 22 years. And in fact, just here at S&P Global Mobility, but even prior, I've been covering the industry for probably closer to 25 years or longer. And I've always had an affinity towards vehicles. So don't get me wrong. I mean, my passion is cars in and of itself. So that helps. But what really has kept me in this industry is different. It's hard to forecast this industry and hard to predict this industry, but that's also what I kind of like about it as well. You never know what you're going to get. So it's an incredibly dynamic industry. You will not get bored in this industry. Sometimes we may wish for a little boredom, but it doesn't usually provide itself. It can be quite volatile in its own right. And the ingenuity, though, in this industry is incredibly attractive. And when I say ingenuity, it's not just about having the coolest car on the road, or, some automaker designing the next whiz-bang feature on their vehicle. That's cool too. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I'm talking about ingenuity, it's at the shop level. When I'm at a supplier and they found a way to shave 50 cents out of a part, or they found a way to automate a line, or they found a way to make a line more ergonomic for their workers, so it's making the more comfortable manufacturing environment. That's what kind of is really interesting to me, is seeing how we take all of these different concepts, all these different technologies, and really leverage them on the plant floor, leverage them at suppliers and at automakers to create the very engine of what drives our economy. It powers a lot of our industry. And so seeing how the fruits of that labor and all of the technological advancements in what goes on both at the automaker and supplier level, seeing it bear fruit on a daily basis is really motivating. And again, it's something that is always interesting to me and definitely keeps me tied to this industry.